We want a healthy trade and immigration process. But you get back to that little thing called private property, and you begin to recognize that there's private property up and down the Rio Grande River, and we've ignored it. And as a result of ignoring the private property and the rule of law, those farmers and ranchers have been overrun by people criminally trespassing on their property, such that I visited with one farmer who likes to grow tomatoes. He said that's a great climate down by Brownsville to grow tomatoes. He farms thousands of acres, I think 3,400, right along the Rio Grande River. His family has been doing it for 5 generations. They like to grow tomatoes. He said the illegal immigration has gotten so bad he can't grow tomatoes anymore. 5 or 6 days before it's time for harvest, he shows up in the field and it's picked clean. Overnight. Y'all realize the ramification, implication of that. We've got to secure that border. We've got to tell people we want healthy immigration, but it's got to come through the legal ports of entry. We have a gate. It's called the legal port of entry. That's where you need to cross. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the Texas military force. That's the Air National Guard, the Army National Guard, and the State Guard. The governor needs to call into active duty the Texas military force and make them available to local law enforcement and local property owners to secure and protect that border. To your question of the welfare rolls, when we eliminate a property tax and we go to a sales tax, everybody that's here will pay for education. So that will help with some of that concern. We've heard a lot in the Republican Party in particular about voter ID, and I get asked a lot about E-Verify. I was shocked a year ago to listen to testimony being given to the House committee. There was an interim committee, House Committee on Elections, charged with studying electronic voting and voter ID in Texas. And the woman that heads up the driver's license division for the Texas Department of Public Safety testified to that committee that we issue driver's licenses in the state of Texas to illegal immigrants. We can do all the E-Verify we want. If we're handing out driver's licenses to illegal immigrants in this state, we got a problem. We had a bill in the House this last session that died in committee. That woman testifies, it's on videotape, it's like in April 2 years ago, look it up. She testifies even if the individual says, I am not here legally, they check the block, are you in this country legally? And they mark no, we issued them a driver's license anyway. So when we fix that problem, because most times you're supposed to prove you're a citizen before you can get those benefits, but right now, we're issuing driver's licenses to people who are not. So they can vote with that license, they can drive with that license, they can get a job with that license. So we've got to fix that problem in Texas. We'll cure a lot of that. The other place I think that people are mostly concerned about illegal immigrants benefiting from in our system is in health care. And the place I think where we've most gone awry there is with a piece of federal legislation called EMTALA. EMTALA was passed in the mid-'80s. It is what forced emergency service providers to deliver care without regard for a source of payment. And it is what has caused most hospitals from Wharton and Matagorda County to Aransas County all along the greater Texas Gulf Coast, about 3 counties inland. There are very few. I think DTAR is still a private hospital, but almost every hospital in that greater Gulf Coast area is funded by a tax district now, a rural health district, because we have forced those hospitals to deliver charitable care. Over half of the care provided in hospital emergency rooms is free. When the state of Texas stands up and tells Washington, D.C., you have no authority there, charity is decided by the giver of the care, not by the government, then we would stop a lot of that free health care that's being delivered, and we would see that returning to the community where it ought to be.
And we had several questions about education. One, I'm trying to merge several of them together. Short of having to homeschool our children, as by your example, what direction do you see for our public school system?
Being a business person, I think that many in the audience too would realize that monopolies produce poor products and services that consume a lot of resources, and competition generally provides the best products and services available to the most people for the least amount of money. I have said that the Texas public education system is doing exactly what it was created to do. It is a monopoly. It will continue to consume every resource that we throw at it, and it will continue to produce relatively poor products and services. That is what monopolies do. So we can be courageous enough as Texans to begin to tear down the sacred walls that we've erected around that monopoly, and to not just allow but force competition into that system, or we're going to continue to get the same kind of substandard outcomes that we've been getting. I think it's criminal. It's stealing from our kids. They deserve an education. Our state says in order that they would understand liberty, we provide a free public education for the general dissemination of knowledge. I have begun to talk about what if Texas paid for general dissemination of knowledge. It's going to take us 6 years to decide what general dissemination of knowledge is, because this half of the room will say reading, writing, arithmetic, and you guys will want philosophy and history and science and all that stuff. But if we got to general dissemination of knowledge as a state, and remember that our founders thought people would vote with their feet. If you don't like Virginia, go live in Tennessee. If we let school districts, see, we've tried to create, well, Austin's tried to do exactly what Washington does. We see the flaw in Washington, but we're missing the log in Austin. We're trying to create one-size-fits-all education. It doesn't fit anybody. Do we have the courage as a state to say the state's job is to provide for general dissemination of knowledge, and then Victoria, y'all decide what you want the Victoria ISD to look like, parents, community leaders, businesses, and let Goliad do what it wants to do, and let Port Lavaca do what it wants to do, and let Inez do, Inez comes to Victoria? Let Inez do what it wants to do, and Edna do what it wants to do, and allow a little competitive education, and guess what will happen? Cost will go down, education outcomes will shoot through the roof, your kids will start to dream again. But it means you got to have the courage. We've got to have the courage to force competition into that system. Not just allow it, force it in there. So you figure that out. When we bring the collective wisdom of people together, I had a man, 2 businessmen in West Texas, they said, you know, Debra, you might be onto something. We've got parents from European nations that send their kids to our public universities because we still got the best university system in the world. But not too many of them are sending their kids to our public high schools. Are there some things that we're doing in public ed? And I thought about that. You know, every college has core curriculum. Maybe that's what the state pays for. And then you figure out what you're going to do with the rest. Your kid wants a music class. Do you fund that with local taxes? Do parents pay tuition to get that music class? Does some local businessman say, I really want an advanced physics class at the college and we'll fund that and kids can apply to get into that class? Start thinking about how do we shove competition into that system. When you make it competitive, it will start to produce in ways we haven't even really begun to dream about. You thought all I had up my sleeve was property tax.
Well, we thank you. This is the limit of the time that we're allowed here at this facility, so we're really grateful that you joined us here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.